Hey guys, welcome back to the 15th part of my series previewing the 2020-21 NBA season. And today we're going to talk about the Memphis Grizzlies. So, last season the Grizzlies finished with a 34-39 record, and that was really good, especially for a young team that didn't have high expectations or really any expectations, but they were competing for the 8 seed the whole year and had it for most of it. And then just at the end, the Blazers pipped them to the 8 seed, so they went to the play-in game, which they lost, but still a really positive season for the Grizzlies, and Ja Morant won Rookie of the Year, so overall a really good season for this young team. This offseason didn't have much to do, and they didn't do much. They didn't have their first round pick, but they traded 2 future seconds for the 30th pick, and with that pick they drafted Desmond Bane, and then they picked up a few undrafted rookies, and then they lost Josh Jackson, and they re-signed D'Anthony Melton. So not a big offseason, but just a solid offseason where they took care of business. So if we look at a projected starting lineup, I think it could be Ja Morant, Dillon Brooks, Kyle Anderson, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Jonas Valanciunas. So Ja Morant obviously had a great rookie season last season, won the Rookie of the Year, averaged about 18 points, 7 assists, 4 rebounds, just really good production, and especially for a point guard. Point guards usually struggle coming into the year in the first season, but not Ja. He really looked comfortable and he played really well. And then also he was a really great leader for this team, and that's really something great for a young player, and I'm really high on Ja, and I think he has a really good future. And then the only place where he could improve is maybe his 3-point shot. I mean, didn't shoot a great percentage, but he certainly has the tools to. And if he could add a really good 3-point shot, I mean, become almost unstoppable, and he's a really good player, and I think he'll kick on in his second year. They also have Dillon Brooks, who averaged 16 points a game last season. He's a really confident shooter, and so that leads to his efficiency maybe being not so great, just because he's there's no shot that he's not willing to attempt, and having that confidence is great, especially for a young guy, but maybe the coaching staff will want him to just tune it down a little bit and just be 20% smarter with his shot selection, but still good confidence, and he is a good shooter, so that's really something good, especially for a young player. At 3, Kyle Anderson, I mean, he's a pretty solid player. If anyone in the starting 5 were to get replaced, it'd probably be him, but just a solid player, and I'm sure he'll have another solid season for them. And in every starting 5, you kind of need just a solid player who's not going to demand too many shots or anything like that, and Kyle Anderson is that for the Grizzlies. And then they have Jaren Jackson Jr., who is, in my opinion, one of the most exciting and intriguing young players in the NBA. Last season, averaged about 17 points, 4 rebounds, and a block and a half. I mean, the first thing with him is he's a really good defender. Obviously, he has the blocks, but just the amount of stops he gets defensively and his versatility on that end, that's really exciting. And I think maybe not next season, but in the future, he'll definitely be an all-defensive regular. And he has a really bright future on that end. And he's also a lethal shooter for a power forward. His form is a bit unorthodox, but it goes in and it doesn't seem to be a problem since he gets it off quite quickly. He shot 39% from 3 on 6.5 attempts, so that's really good for any player, but for a bigger guy, that's really impressive. Only 4 rebounds for a power forward, and I don't think that's a huge issue, but might prevent him from playing center a bit. But he spends so much time further away from the basket that he's just not in that area. But as long as you have a good rebounding center, he's solid there. And then the other thing is just fouls a bit too much, but I think he'll get better at with experience. But that's something he should improve on, but still a really good young player, a really unique young player, and I think he'll have another good season. And then at center, Jonas Valanciunas, 15 points a game, 11 boards, just a player you want next to Jaren Jackson Jr. Started shooting a few threes last season. I mean, is a good rebounder and just a really solid player all around and a solid center for them and sort of the player they need. And then off the bench, this is a really deep team. They have Tyus Jones, can give you about 7 points a game, 4 assists, just a solid all-around backup point guard. And they have Grayson Allen, who averaged 9 points a game, but his shooting really improved in the bubble, and he can be a really good shooter for them. And that's exciting, especially off the bench. And DeAnthony Melton, they signed him to a new contract. He's really a good backup combo guard, about 8 points a game, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. He's a really good backup for them and just a really solid player. And they drafted Desmond Bane, who is a really exciting player. He is a really, really good shooter. He's a bit older, so hopefully he'll adapt well and can contribute in his rookie season, given that he's a really good shooter and a really smart player. So he'll also be solid for them off the bench. And then they have Justice Winslow, which was the main return in the Iguodala trade. He didn't play for the Grizzlies at all, but with the Heat, he averaged this season 11 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists. And he has really exciting potential and a really high ceiling. Whether he'll reach it, I'm not sure, but really good, exciting potential as a point forward for them. And maybe provide some more playmaking off the bench. And that's something that every team needs more of, and if he can just stay healthy and his shot can improve, he can be a really good player for them off the bench. And then they have Brandon Clark, who's another player that I'm a really big fan of. Last season he averaged 12 points, 6 rebounds. I mean, just a really solid all-around player, and he might move into the starting lineup a bit, play some backup center, or him and Jared Jackson as the front court, and those are some really exciting lineup possibilities for the Grizzlies, and I wonder if we'll see more of that this season. And then backup center, Gorgui Dieng, can give you about 7 points, 6 rebounds, be an okay backup center. I'm not sure how much he'll play, just due to them having 3 very good front court players in Jared Jackson Jr., Valanciunas, and Brandon Clark, but if they need him to play, he'll be solid. So, some of the positives with this team is they're a young, deep team. They have a lot of options, a really good bench, and they're just a solid young team with a very exciting future. And then they also have Ja Morant and Jared Jackson Jr., and that's a really exciting and good young duo to build around. So they should be really excited for the future, but also can be really solid right now. And then the third thing is this is just a really well-run franchise. Just you saw it trading 2 seconds for Desmond Bane. They have a good coach in Taylor Jenkins. So even if they do take a little step back this season just due to the competition in the West coming up and getting better, I'm still confident they're going to be a good team in the long run, and they're going to make smart decisions, and this team is going to continue to be solid. And maybe if they're not so good this season, they get a good draft pick. That's what this team needs. So some of the negatives is they're not really an elite team. They're a really good young team, but not quite that elite level. And then they don't have the star power of the other Western Conference contenders. Like, you look at the West, and the Lakers have LeBron and AD, the Clippers have Kawhi, the Blazers have Dame, the Warriors have Steph, and the list goes on and on of the superstars in the West. So when you don't have an elite player in the West, it's really, really hard to get to the playoffs. So they might just struggle a little bit this season. So as for where I think they can finish, maybe the 10th or 11th seed, just due to the West being so tough. But I'm really excited about the future of this team. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys.